The stick is that I will not let us go back again. We will not go back on probation. We will not have bad assessment because these support unit reviews aren't being done. And if I have to use the stick, I'll use it. I'd rather the carrot. And again, I don't mean that negatively. I think I'm preaching to the choir for the most part. I think everybody here wants their program to be the best. I'm looking across the screen here, and I don't see a single person. And hold on, I might see one person, Mike. No, I'm not. I don't see anybody here. Honestly, everyone I see wants their department to be the very best. So I think genuinely they do. They may doubt whether this thing will help them. And hopefully the presentation today will show how it can. And if that's not enough, work with me. We will make sure this can help you, because the point of assessment is to help you be better. And if it's not useful to you, we'll figure out a way to make it useful. I know you want to be the best. This is essential. It is not doing it'll hurt us for HLC, but that's not really why we're doing it. We're doing it because I want us to be the best. And I want everybody at this institution to go to some other college and visit with their friends there. And I want them to be proud about all the great things we're doing. And we want those other people wishing they worked for Black River. And this is part of that tool. All right. So I'll leave you in the capable hands of our experts. I think it's Ashley, Sissy, and Dorinda. I think you guys have got this today. Is that correct? I'll leave it with you guys, and I will bow out, because I know sometimes the key to success is to be able to talk bad and trash your boss. So I'm going to get out of here so you can do that as you need to and cuss at me as much as you need. All right. Neil, are you wearing a turtleneck? Doesn't it? Okay, because I was thinking he is looking really slick there with a turtleneck on. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Do you have any questions before I go? Anybody? No questions? All right. Again, feel free to trash talk me as much as you want. I get that, and I'm used to it. But I do ask that you take this very seriously, because we want you to. I think you are a great department. And I think every department can be a little bit better. And I think you're the only ones that know how that can happen. So, guys, I'm leaving it with you. And I trust your judgment. Crack the whip on them, okay? Ashley, you, Dorinda, Sissy, get them to working. Bye, guys.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen, hopefully. Oh, I haven't allowed it to share my screen. Well, isn't that lovely?
Let me see if I can share it from my end.
Yeah. My system preferences aren't set up to allow it.
Okay, just a second. Okay, I think I can pull it up here. You see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Hopefully I can navigate through here. Oh, hold on. That's the last slide. Let me back up. Okay. Well, Ashley, I've not used this.
Hit the
Program
present
before.
at the top.
Hit what?
Present at the top.
There we are.
And then present again. Think that'll work.
It's coming up to that last slide for some reason. Okay, here I think
Go
I saw a
back.
button.
Just hit back until you get to the front slide and it'll be fun.
Restart. There, that'll take care of it.
There
Okay.
it goes.
All right.
What we need is a business teacher.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna brag. Ashley did all of this presentation, and she did an awesome job. I don't know if y'all are familiar with Canva, But I've used it just for some little things, to post on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. I didn't even know you could do presentations with it. And we met the other day and she created this presentation in Canva and it's awesome. So she did a great job.
I told her I'd do the presentation if she'd do the talking, so.
All right, so are we ready? Okay, and you, Ashley and Sissy still on here. You guys chime in, anytime here. So this session is for all of the staff for the administrative and support unit reviews. And I don't know exactly when we started this process. It's not been too long ago. So even those of you that have went through the process, there's probably still, I don't know that we ever really had a training session for it. I think we were just kind of given forms and I'm sure Sissy helped, but hopefully this will be beneficial to those of you that have been through it before and then those of you that have not. Okay, and so the forms that you are going to need and the instructions, all of that information is out here on the portal for you. And Ashley even created a little video that I'm going to play just to show you how you can access those.
I made this because when I was looking for these forms, I had a hard time. I was looking under faculty and staff, but it's under institutional.
Okay.
And then the institutional effectiveness. And then the forms are over there. And that's the forms.
Okay, and so this has, there's an assessment guidebook that Sissy has created that even has some of these that some units have completed already. And so, I always like to see an example, look back at something, and it gives me a really good idea of what's expected. So those examples are there in the assessment guidebook in the back in the appendix. And then also just the templates where you will start on your own review. All of that information is there where Ashley just showed you in the video. Okay, so this is a 3-year process. And every unit is going to be at a different point. So Sissy had the schedule and she shared that with us. So you can see here, find your unit where you're located in year 1, year 2, or year 3. And at every year, you're working on something just a little bit different about this process. And so that's what we're going to go through today and just kind of explain to you the differences in year 1, year 2, and year 3. So if you didn't know where you're at, here's the schedule. All right, so what is assessment? We've heard this over and over for years. And Ashley and I both coming from the faculty side of this over to the staff side now, it's still really the same thing. When we were instructors, there are always certain things that we want our students to get out of our classes. And we always need to take a look at that and see, are they learning what we want them to learn? And if not, how can we make sure that they do? There's always room for improvement. So the same thing on the staff side. There are certain reasons for your unit. There are certain objectives of why you're there and what your purpose is. So you need to make sure that those are defined and you need to have a way that you can measure those and make sure that you are successfully doing what you need to be doing. And just like in the classroom, always room for improvement. I don't know about you guys, but I taught for 20 years and there was a way for me to do things better every single year. So the same thing in our units, there's always going to be a way for us to make an improvement. And I do want to mention that it's on the slide here that this is a requirement and it is in our policies and procedures manual. So, as I said, not just for academics, also here on the staff side, but even just everything in life. Ashley and I were talking through this the other day and she said, think about even in your relationships, There are always things that you need to look at and you need to assess and you need to see how you can improve that. So, everything we do, there are ways that we can make those improvements. And specifically here, we need to have data to back that up. And just kind of thinking about how to present this, I know most of us all have children. And when you tell your children that they need to do something, how many times do you get the answer, why? And if I just tell them because I said so, they usually don't like that. They want a specific answer. So we need to have some data. We need to have something there to back up the decisions that we are making.
On that bottom part, I also wanted to point out that if you use that data, this can be very helpful in like budget requests. Those budget meetings are coming up. If you have data to show why you need the things you need to make your department better, your odds are going to be much better. And so this can really help you improve your department and even get money.
Okay, so every year you are to complete a SLADR. And so that stands for Support Level Assessment Data Report. So those goals, those things that your unit needs to be doing every year, those are going to be listed here in your outcomes column. Okay, and there's another slide here in a minute about creating outcomes. You also need to make sure that you have a way that you can measure those outcomes. Are you doing what you want to be doing? It needs to be measurable. It needs to be specific enough, and you need to have a tool. Now, a lot of the support units use the survey, the institutional survey that Sissy sends out every year. The questions in that survey gather data. That's an assessment tool, but there are other tools that you may need to use as well. And then, of course, you need to have a benchmark. Oh, I didn't mean to go on just yet.
That's right. This is the same stuff.
Okay.
Just prettier.
And
this is the back page.
Let me back up.
There you go.
All right. So on that page again, here it's explaining those items to you, how you're going to measure your outcomes. That's your assessment tool. You need to make sure you note on there where you're keeping that assessment data, just in case, Dr. E mentioned HLC, in case we ever need proof of this, that we have that. And at the end of the year, you saw over there on the side, it had year 1, year 2, and year 3. So every year you're going to record your results of that assessment. So how successful were you? And compare that year to year.
So most of those columns will stay the same for the whole 3-year cycle. That last column is the main one that will change.
So do you care to talk a little bit about this back page?
Oh, well, the back page will also possibly change as well. The outcomes, you'll just relist the same outcomes that you have on the front page. And the next slide actually talks about how to create those outcomes a little bit, because when I was thinking about this, I thought that would be something I would struggle with. And so I wanted to spend a second talking about that. The second column on the back page is planned improvement, and it wants to know how you're going to change things for the remainder of your 3-year cycle. So what are you going to do to fix what's not working in your unit? And if you're on the last year, what are your plans for the next 3-year cycle? The rationale, hopefully the rationale is obvious, but this is where you tie that improvement to those numbers. You say, well, the numbers show that we need to fix it, so that's why we're fixing it. Implementation date just has to do with when you think you'll be able to make those changes, because sometimes if those changes require some budget things, you may not be able to do it immediately. Some things you can do immediately, but some things aren't quite that easy. And then plans is just how you're going to show that your changes were effective. How are you going to measure whether or not those changes had an effect? So,
okay. Okay, so writing outcomes. Outcomes need to be measurable. As we said, they need to be very specific. I like to think of this, I always teach in my classes setting goals. And so we talk about SMART goals, about how they need to be very specific and very measurable and attainable, and, go on with the whole acronym. So it kind of fits that same criteria. So when you are writing your outcomes, these are the questions that you want to make sure are included. Make sure that you're identifying the who, what, how, proficiency, and when. Including all of that information is going to make sure that it is specific and that it is measurable. Sometimes when we write outcomes, we are just very general. I know that happened to myself. I would write one and it was just very, very general. And then whenever I tried to assess it, it was difficult because I didn't have all of the parts that I needed to really get good information from that. So, that was a way we could go back and we could rewrite that outcome to make it meet the criteria you see here.
You'll find lots of lists online of like verbs that you want to use and verbs that you want to avoid. And really, you just have to think about how you're going to measure these things. Because verbs like people will appreciate something that the department does. How are you really going to measure whether or not someone appreciates what you're doing, right? Now, understand, they can perhaps do that. Define, they can perhaps do that. So you have to really be careful with the verbs you use in outcomes, because some things just aren't measurable.
Okay, so here are a couple of good examples from that general, statement that I mentioned. So the admissions office will be able to process more student applications. That's just very general. So the one over here on the right is much more specific. It answers or addresses all of those elements that were on that previous slide. The admissions office will be able to systematically process pre-student applications, by A, B, and C. Okay, so big difference there. Same thing on the next one. The Human Resources Department will expedite the new hire process. Very general. And then look at the one on the right. They will be able to A, B, and C, much more detail.
And so those are so much easier to measure. You can very easily say, yes, we did that, or no, we didn't do that, or we did that. We did 50% of that, and it gives you somewhere to grow. Because the first one, it's kind of like, well, I'm going to do better. Well, what is better, right?
All right, so what is expected here over the 3 years? Year one, oh goodness, I apologize, y'all. I'm not used to this yet. Year one is the self-study. So this is where you are really taking a look at your unit and what its primary purpose is. Making sure that those outcomes are in place and providing all of the documentation that is necessary. So this one is pretty lengthy, 10 to 15 pages, but you're doing what it says. You're doing a self-study. You're looking at every component of your unit. Year two is not quite as long, 6 to 8 pages. This is just continuous improvement. So you're just, telling how you are working towards those outcomes that you set there in year one. And then year three is kind of your wrap up. It's your summary report, 4 to 8 pages. You take that look back at, did you meet those outcomes? What were your results? And what are you going to do going forward? What changes need to be made and how are you going to do that?
Something important to note there, the year 3 summary reports will undergo formal review. We are a part of the assessment committee. That's how we were given this illustrious job. And part of our committee is creating rubrics for the ASURs. So there will be rubrics, they will be graded. I don't know exactly what's going to happen with them after that, but by the next faculty focus meeting, we will have copies of those rubrics so that you guys can see them while you're creating your ASUR paperwork reports. So I viewed this kind of like a checklist. It's just kind of an idea of the kind of information you need to be gathering throughout the year in order to complete each year. So there's a different page for each year. Year one, as you notice, the report is the longest report. So obviously it has the most information being collected, but a lot of this is not really going to change. Because it's things like, what is the mission of your unit? What are the formal job descriptions from your unit? And you are supposed to submit the actual formal job description that HR has for each person in your unit. And some of those things don't really change all that much, but some of them do, like the outcomes and the assessment data and all that information.
Like I said, there's a sample in the appendix. I think admissions, I think Angie French's example was the one included in the appendix. And you look at this checklist and you think, oh my gosh, but looking at that example, I think will make it a little bit easier for you to understand exactly what information to include there. Okay, so year two is continuous improvement. So, year one, you've looked at your entire unit, you know what your purpose and your main objectives are. So now you're just trying to make sure that you are meeting those. So I know in business, we do a SWOT analysis a lot of times. So that's what you're doing here. You're looking at your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. So you're identifying those in your year two continuous improvement report. What do you do well? Where do you need improvement? Where are some areas that we have an advantage there in the opportunities? And then maybe there are some threats out there that we need to be aware of, and we need to be planning for that.
But even though year two is largely just kind of a reflective year to show that you're still working on the outcomes you said you were going to be working on, you still have to do the slider and you still have to do the budget report. Those are
every year,
all 3 years.
Okay, so then year three, like I said, it's just your wrap up or your summary report. So you've gathered this information, on that slider for 3 years. So now you are going back and you're looking at the data you've collected and you're reflecting on it. Same thing with the budgets and the goals. And then you are, from that information, you are going to start planning for your next 3 years. Do your outcomes need to change? What plans do you need to put in place? Does the budget need to change based on the data that you have collected? Okay, so anything else that you can think of, Sissy or Ashley, either one of you? Or anybody have questions that we can try to answer?
Question for you. And understands, I think most of us have been doing this since 2017. So I guess my first question is, what's different this year from what's been required of these things in the past?
There isn't anything different really, but not all of the departments have done it as thoroughly as perhaps your department.
Okay. Well, get them in line then.
It seems there's still a lot of confusion about what exactly is supposed to be done, and also why it needs to be done.
Okay. And I guess my other question is, are we still doing the big institutional survey? Is everybody's questions part of the big institutional survey? Are we still doing that as part of our data?
Sissy, you might have to.
Yes, the answer to that is yes, we will still be doing that this fall.
Okay.
Now I'll thank you for bringing that up, Mike. If anybody wants to, as they work on this, want to change their questions now, you can send those to me. We can update the questions at any time. And then, that way you're not trying to remember 3-4 months from now, oh, what was that question that I wanted to ask? So anytime that you want to visit with me about that, please feel free to.
Well, and these are due June 30th.
Mhm.
And so, with that time, if you're trying to measure your outcomes and you realize you don't have the data that you need, that would be a great time to kind of reevaluate the questions that you have in there and send those in to Sissy, because it's not till the fall, right? So that would give you plenty of
That's
time
correct.
to adjust those. And yes, Callie, I can share the thing here.
Good morning. Could you guys talk a little bit about the expectations and the length of what you expect on each criterion, or whatever you want to call each numbered item?
Sissy, you want to take
You
that?
want me to take that one? Sure. Thank you, Regina. There is for each section, there are recommended prompts that you can use to kind of spur the narrative that you write. And there's also a recommended length. Now, I do emphasize recommendation. However, I suspect when we have the rubric to share with you, and we will, once the assessment committee has developed the rubric that will be used to kind of evaluate at least the year 3. I suspect there will be something in regard to the thoroughness of the response. Maybe probably not a word count, not a 5 paragraphs, nothing that specific, but there probably will be an evaluative criteria related to the thoroughness. So I do encourage each unit to look at that recommended length requirement for each item, and just ensure that you're being very thorough as you respond. Does that help, Regina?
Yes, thanks.
Anybody else?
So when you talked about the evaluation, who all will be evaluating us, our finished product, and are you saying that evaluation is not going to start until we finish up our 3-year, the final one?
So what I imagine or suspect is going to happen is that the evaluative process will be very similar to the academic process, just for consistency's sake. So on the academic side, there is an annual report submitted every year, but the formal internal review does not occur until year 3. So I suspect that as the assessment committee works toward adopting a rubric, the rubric that they develop will apply specifically to year 3, but in their review, they will have to look at year 1 and year 2 as well. So you can, what I would anticipate is that you would get feedback every 3 years as you conclude a full cycle.
Sissy, do you know who will be looking at those rubrics? And
it will be the same group that's developing the rubric right now. It will be a subcommittee of the assessment committee. Because that's how the academic side is working. We have a program. Prior to the shared governance restructuring, we had a standalone program review committee for the academic side. They've now been kind of they've become a subcommittee of the assessment committee as a whole. They are the ones that do the reviews on the every 3 years, the academic self-study. We will have a support unit version of that as well. So it will be a committee of peers.
thank you.
Any other questions?
One last thing I wanted to address was, all faculty or I mean, staff are presumably at this meeting. And some of you may be going, I don't even know what y'all are talking about. What is this? Technically, your unit heads are the ones who write all of this up, but it does say in all of the paperwork that it's really important that all members of that unit help. And as you've seen, it's a lot of data to collect and a lot of information and a lot of reflection about what's going well and what's not going well in your department. And so as a staff member who may not necessarily be a unit head, you can still have a really big role in this and really help make a difference in your department. And this is a good way to kind of do that.
And so our next Focus Friday is scheduled for May 14th. And I think, like Ashley said, we should have the rubric ready by then for you guys to see, because I know that always helps. So our plan is for that Focus Friday to kind of have a workshop where, since these are due on June 30th, we have a working session where you're getting this information collected, you're getting it down, I'm getting a good start on preparing this. Now, between now and then, we had the checklist there, and you guys know where the forms are. So I would go ahead and try to start, collecting that information and getting a head start so that you'll be ready for that workshop. You probably don't want to wait until the 14th. Try to do some of it before then. Anything that you ladies want to add?
We'll likely split you into groups of people working on year 1, people working on year 2, people working on year 3, and it will possibly just be the unit heads at that point, unless you just are very involved, because there are subunits. And if you are head of kind of a subunit and have been tasked with writing a portion of it for your subunit, then you are more than welcome to come to that workshop. But it will likely mostly just be the unit heads, and it will be a working session.
That is the loudest clock.
I know, I'm hearing that. Whose office is that in? Ashley's?
It's my Wonder Woman clock. It's not even accurate. Like, these are too heavy, and so they just stay pointing there like all the time. I've thought about taking out the battery.
Okay. Questions or comments from anybody?
We appreciate it.
It was a great job on that presentation. That was really cool.
I know I like it. She said that's her job. She's an instructional designer, so she knows what she's doing.
Very much so. I just want to commend you ladies. Absolutely fabulous job. And I really appreciate it. I do want to quickly say, if this is if the work that Dorinda and Ashley are doing, if it is interesting to you, or if we've talked about, the involvement of the assessment committee on creating a rubric and then, being a peer reviewer later down the road, if that interests you, I would encourage you to think about the assessment committee the next time we send out the survey for, the committee service. This is something that they're doing, and I know this doesn't appeal to everybody, but if you were thinking, I'd like to be one of the reviewers, or I'd like to have a hand in, rubric development and that kind of thing, give it some thought.
Is this PowerPoint going to be available, and maybe the recording? Is it going to be posted anywhere?
The recording is going to be posted on the DE YouTube. We're trying to create a video library there, and so that's where I'm going to post the recording, and I will send out should I just send it out to all? Sissy?
Yes, and I'll go ahead and put it on the portal page under the training links as well. So we'll have it in a couple of different places.
And if you haven't checked out Canva, you should. It's really cool. It's just canva.com, and you can do all kinds of neat things like the little animations, which make your presentation a little more engaging for some. All right, I think that's it.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Good job. Thank you.